stress and these situations that we find ourselves in that keep us stuck, overwhelmed, it really impacts our nervous system, and then that causes our hormones to be all out of whack, and you just find yourself like existing in a world that you're like, how did I even get here? I really believe that we have such, from autoimmune disorders to chronic conditions, high blood pressure, all of these things can be related to traumas and things from the past.
I want to welcome everybody back to another episode of The Soul Inspired. Today we have Megan Babcock with us. She is a mental health coach and also specializes in trauma recovery. So I'm excited to talk to her about her life, what she has learned so far in her life, and the experiences she had. So thank you so much, Megan, for being on today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
I usually like to start by looking at who Megan is and who you were as a child up until the place you're at now.
I grew up in a two-parent home. I had a great family life. I had grandparents that lived close by. And in my life, when I was older and looking back, I was like, why am I so messed up? Like I had a good life. And so one of the things that I like to talk about in my own journey is how trauma can be hidden in quiet experiences that you wouldn't necessarily think, oh, that was so traumatic. I actually did have trauma in my life that was significant with some sexual abuse and domestic violence in a marriage, but I never really acknowledged it. And so, my goal with the podcast I have and the work that I do is really to bring awareness to those childhood experiences where something might have happened and you didn't even recognize it, but there was a wounding in your soul that now is carrying with you. And, I know you do a lot of near-death experiences. Well, in my life, I really felt like I was walking around alive but dead inside
Mm.
and really just kind of numb to everything that was going on in the world until about 9 years ago when I started on this journey of recovery after leaving a domestic violence marriage. And really, I was so fortunate because in my state, the Department of Human Services works with families that have these kinds of situations going on. And with that caseworker came a domestic violence advocate. And I had tried to leave many times. I wasn't able to. I would always end up going back into the situation. This woman, Julia, I think of her as my angel. She really helped me to begin the process of understanding where these unhealthy ways of interacting with the world, from perfectionism, people pleasing, codependency, and what they were creating in my life. Because I had had these cycles just keep happening and I didn't know how to break them. I had been in counseling. And for me, counseling was not what I needed. And so one of the things that I also bring awareness to is all the other healing modalities that there are uh, out there that can help us, because healing is not a one size fits all. And so I now use my story and my experience and then just my training as a nurse. When I was 5, I told my mom in my baby book, she wrote, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, a nice nurse. Well, I like to achieve. I make goals happen. So I did that. But there was always something missing in that, because in healthcare as it is today, unfortunately, seeing people get better, recover, is is not part of the model. We really don't we, in a lot of cases, it's probably more accurately called sick care, and instead of health care. So I kind of left that whole world and started my coaching practice and my podcast about a year and a half ago, and have been on an awesome journey of bringing on other coaches in a collective. And I have a really exciting project that I've been working on that'll be launching in January, bringing technology and the human side of coaching to really help people understand their stress in the moment and find solutions that work for them so that they can get through their hard so that they can build that life that they really desire. And that work today has brought me to a very fulfilling life. I don't walk around numb and dead in my life.
Mm.
And I just love sharing and talking about what's possible when you're really willing to do the work.
You mentioned you were nursing. You were a nurse. Were you doing that during the times where the domestic abuse was going on? Is that what your career field was at that time, like from like early 20s, that type of thing? Or is that
So I've been a nurse for 22 years this year. I
okay?
was working as a nurse, but I had moved out of bedside and into working for a medical device company. I've been in pharmaceutical companies. I've been in biotech companies. So my corporate leadership is really what has helped me as we're launching this big project as a solution for helping people manage their stress, because stress and these situations that we find ourselves in that keep us stuck, overwhelmed, it really impacts our nervous system, and then that causes our hormones to be all out of whack, and you just find yourself like existing in a world that you're like, how did I even get here? When
Hmm.
I was in that situation, I'm like, how did I even get here? Well, if you've ever been driving and then you show up at your destination and you're like, I wasn't even present. Like, thank God I didn't, like, did I stop at all the stoplights? Like,
Hmm.
that was life, just kind of going through it, not really experiencing it. And it really stemmed from childhood wounding, and really from a place that I didn't even know existed. And since I've been able to do my work, I've been able to go through some pretty significant points in my life, all the way back to when I was 4, where things happened that um, wounded me. And then those woundings, they create beliefs that you then have, and those beliefs then build narratives. And those narratives and your thoughts are really what create the life that you're living. And so I had to really get present and figure out what are these things that are creating this life, because it's not even the life that I want.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you mentioned a few really good points here. You're talking about, you know, the effects of stress and how it can really affect our body and our nervous system and all these things. When you were going through those moments in your life, that I think you said it was about 9 years ago, was when you changed, kind of went through your recovery of getting out of
Mhm.
domestic issues and things like that. When you were living that life, did you notice, say, more chronic illness or things like that? Was there more of that that would pop up? I'm wondering what your experience was around that.
Yeah. So definitely, I actually, all the way back to when I was in college as a nurse, I got diagnosed with fibromyalgia. I got diagnosed with irritable bowel. I had a lot of migraines. Um, and as a nurse, I did not want to take medication. I really have a holistic view and did everything that I could to help my body, from the way I would eat to exercise. I used chiropractic, acupuncture, massage, and I never went on medication, which my symptoms weren't ever fully resolved, but I was able to really manage them with
Mhm.
these modalities. what I didn't realize and what isn't taught in nursing school and probably medical school
Mhm.
is really how those things are very common in people who have trauma. And medical professionals, one, do not have time to sit down and do a trauma history, find out about what's really going on in your life. And so they just want to give you a medication. And it was only through doing my healing and doing this really deep inner child work, reparenting myself and giving myself what I needed that I didn't get in those younger years, that I began to see those things going by the wayside. So no more migraines. Now, when stress comes up in my life and I'm navigating something really hard, I will see those symptoms pop back up in my
Mhm.
life. And
Mhm.
then it's my warning sign that says, whoa, my emotions are, my stress right now is I'm not effectively managing it. So what do I need to do? And when I can step back and start really then diving into what's happening emotionally inside of me versus just the physical, I start to see those symptoms go away. So I really believe that we have such from autoimmune disorders to chronic conditions, high blood pressure, all of these things can be related to traumas and things from the past. And my goal is to help people to be able to look at it from all angles because there are mechanical issues sometimes with our body that we need to treat. But if we only look at one aspect of who we are, we are mind, body, spirit, and all of those aspects of who we are can impact the way we feel and how we're showing up in the world. And so, um, with my background from medical to functional medicine, nursing to mental health, I sit at this really interesting point to be able to help people kind of look at all different aspects.
Mhm. One thing I love that you just said was the idea that, you know, you kind of understand your body at this point, and you know that when your body shows, some people would call it a flare up or a moment of,
Mhm.
you know, where these ailments we have reintroduce themselves. You said it was like a warning. I've said the same thing. I have a skin condition called psoriasis, and like, growing up with it and some joint pain and things like that. And
Mhm.
when I notice when that starts to act up, uh, you know, I I haven't been always great at this, but it's more of a warning. I think sometimes people will get something and they'll just keep it going, keep it going, keep it going, keep it going, and then they'll go get medication or whatever it is to put a band-aid over top of the issue they're having, instead of actually digging into seeing what is actually going on deep inside. Because if we know, you said around the emotional aspect of everything, right? So if we're just pushing our emotions down and not feeling our emotions, our body, everybody's body's different, right? It comes out with these
Mhm.
different things. And, what you want to do is get a hold of that early on as a warning instead of keep it going, because then we lead probably down to some kind of more serious situations, right? So, and I wanted to also just point out the fact that you had mentioned a little bit earlier on when you were speaking about counseling and how you had some counseling done, you had some therapist, or you had
Some, I
counseling.
would say it was like 15 years. So
Oh,
a lot.
okay.
I was dedicated to it. It wasn't just like a few sessions. And well, this isn't for me. No, I showed up
Hmm.
consistently in those sessions. Um, and for me, what I found is when I would show up in a counseling session. Now, I didn't know this when I was in the session, right? Because I was showing up, I was hoping to get some help. But as I have reflected back, and this is why it's not even just counseling, it's who the counselor is, like, or who, your medical doctor is. If you're not seeing things change, don't stick with it because, you know, there are solutions out there, and sometimes you have to try different things. What I found though, when I reflected back and like, what was the difference with Julia and counseling? Because I moved very quickly into healing with Julia. And what I realized is a couple things. When I went into the counselor, I thought they were the expert. So I'm sitting there looking at them like, help, fix me, not me fix me. The
Mm,
only person who can fix you is you. And people who come into your life, whether it be a counselor or a coach like me, they're just a guide to help you ask questions about what is it that you're going through, to get curious. And because I was sitting there thinking this person was the expert, I was not really doing that work to look inside of me. But Julia didn't give me the answers. She just started to help me get curious about things that were going on.
mm,
The other thing about Julia and me when I'm working with clients is that I share part of my story. So there's this vulnerability, and I didn't feel like this person is sitting in front of me as the expert, but she's sitting as somebody who has successfully navigated her own story and gotten out of her own domestic violence
mm.
situation, which gave me hope that it was possible because I'm seeing the life that she lives. And I was willing to take her advice and really trust her guidance. And that relationship and that vulnerability was not there when I was looking to someone to be the expert.
Yeah, it's funny. I like that aspect of it where some counselors will share some of their own experience. They don't have to get deep personally,
Sure.
but they can relate and
Mhm.
showcase that they've also gone through similar journeys, so that because then you go into it feeling you said it beautifully, like in a way that you're talking to somebody who's also gone through it. So you're like, okay, this is someone I can look up to this person and get through the same types of things. Obviously, everyone goes through different things, but I know what you mean by that. Now, I've spoke to different people over the years too, and so it just depends on who it is I'm speaking with. And I also like
Mhm.
how you said, don't stick with it if you're not seeing any change at all. Because one of the aspects, and I've gone down this road with a few other guests that I've had on, where I sometimes question if counseling in the wrong direction can actually cause more harm, because you're almost getting reintroduced to the trauma in a way that's not
Mm.
healing. So you're just kind of
Oh, that's so
re-jabbing
good.
that wound,
Yeah.
right? And I think that that's just, I'd want to know what your thoughts were around that.
Yeah. Well, that was my experience was, and again, this was my experience because there are people who have had great results from counseling, and that's why there is not a one size fits all in this. And it's important to tune into yourself and trust how you're feeling about something, and that's part of this journey. I wanted to say before I go into that, the other piece that just came to my mind as you were talking about the environment and being able to be open. The other really, especially for trauma survivors or people who have just been pushing down these really hard emotions, a lot of the time it's resulting from shame.
Mm,
And when you aren't able to have someone who can be vulnerable and help to um, tone down that shame voice that's talking to you, it makes it very difficult to be able to even hear and move forward because our brain and our nervous system, want to protect us.
mm,
And so we kind of shut down and we're not fully engaged. So nothing can work, whether that's counseling or coaching, if you can't learn to navigate that voice and take care of yourself and move through it, you can't really be successful. Um, and so for me, that kind of talk therapy and going in, and I would every week be kind of just talking about these traumas and things that were happening. I was just, I felt like I was running on a hamster wheel, totally stuck and never, there was not an exit point. The counseling wasn't getting me to stop. And one of the things, I know it's really hard because we want to validate and we want people to feel safe. But when we are not honest, it actually doesn't create safety for people. And so, how you bring up maybe something that's not effective for someone, and how maybe they could be more effective if they actually looked at themselves, they could move forward. And, I didn't have the counselor wasn't challenging me on like, you know, this cycle keeps happening. The only thing that's the same in all of these situations is you.
Mm.
So what can you do to make a change here and empower the person to see that they do not have to be a victim of this, that
Yes.
there's things that they can do in order to make things better. For me, I needed to learn boundaries. I had none. And a lot of people in the medical field, helper healers,
Yep.
they don't have boundaries. And and that will destroy your life because and I needed to learn that. So I think sometimes if if we're in a situation and they're not really challenging us, as painful as the challenge can be, it's really not helping you move forward. And that was me just sitting there talking about it, was re-traumatizing. It
Mhm.
wasn't moving me forward. I'd leave tired and exhausted from the session, not inspired and ready to like, okay, I got this.
Right. Yeah, I do remember for myself when I'm a songwriter and everything, but before I did all this and I was becoming a social worker, and it was a
Mhm.
route that I was going to go, and some days I feel like I still am. But we would learn about talk therapy, we would learn about all these different aspects and modalities when you're counseling individuals. I have a different approach and thought around the entire uh, part of it. Is that I do believe there is a healing aspect to talk therapy, short-lived, where some people, depending on the experience of the person, they don't have a voice. So
Mhm.
there's individuals who literally living their life with no voice at all. They may have nobody, no family members, nobody they can actually reach out to. So when you first get introduced to a therapist, sometimes it is important to get those things off your chest just so you can feel validated that, okay, this is what's going on. I feel sorry for myself. This has been terrible. And getting that maybe emotional response back that, yes, that's a horrible
Mhm.
situation. And I'm sorry you had to go through that. I think where we might go wrong is when that therapy session just repeats, where
Mhm.
that next session is the same thing and it's the
Mhm.
same thing. We get into the same, it's the same thing where they say, you are with the five people you surround yourself with. If you're surrounding
Yeah.
yourself with individuals who all just want to complain about how terrible life is, then guess what? Monday and Tuesday are going to be the exact same. And Wednesday, guess what? Wednesday's worse. And then Thursday, it's the same. So you're going to complain to the same people and you're going to have the same things. So I think it's around that. I think what really should happen is there is that moment of introduction of this is what I went through. This is how I feel. This is why I'm sad. But then move into the healing aspect of it. I think that's maybe what goes wrong is that some therapists believe it's just good to just keep letting these feelings out. And because we don't want to be filled with it, we want to let it out.
Which
But I do,
is totally
yeah.
true. Like I
Yes.
absolutely, one of the modalities that I really love is dialectical behavior therapy. And the reason I love it is because it is a combination of um, talking about what is reality, and then it's really this both and like this is my reality and how do I want to move forward and change it? And so dialectical just means two things can exist simultaneously. And basically what it is, it gives you all of these different skills to help you manage your emotional dysregulation, which is what gets in our way of progressing, right? It goes back to fight, flight, freeze, fawn, um, where something reminds you of something from your past, like you become triggered, right? Because a trigger, all that is another warning sign. Your body, how something like psoriasis is being displayed, but a trigger emotionally is saying, "Hey, there's something here." Now, if we just go into a coping mechanism, whether it was for me perfectionism, people pleasing, codependency, for some it could be drugs, alcohol, whatever it is that you use to numb that and to avoid that, it just keeps that cycle going. But when you can recognize this emotional dysregulation and say, okay, I can't really dive into the in a dysregulated state because I won't be able to process it. I'm going to use one of these skills. And so it really helps people, I find, to start retraining their nervous system and their body to safety so that then they can do that work to go in and process the emotions. So I think telling your story, my podcast is It's Your Story to Tell. It's all about telling your story of your hard, but then how did you move through it so that you could live the most fulfilling life? And so for me, it's that whole both. You've got to do both because it has to be an environment where you feel safe and validated to even continue moving forward with that person.
I love it. Your podcast, you said it's called It's Your Story to Tell. Is that the name
Yeah.
of it?
Yeah.
I love the name of it. That's great. I was going to say earlier on, you spoke about all the different things you were trying, including diet and things like that. And I'm a strong believer in diet because when you look at the nervous system and just your immune system and everything, if it's not regulated and it's overactive, then it makes it that much harder to heal, right? Mentally
Hmm.
and emotionally. So there's such a large there's just more going on than just going at it from one place. So I always encourage people, yeah, eat better as well, because then you're calming things down. It gives you,
Sleep better, all
yeah,
the things.
sleep,
Like if we
eat,
don't just like,
exercise.
yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
you can't do one thing and expect it to it every one thing can reduce your stress and support your body, but it's really that holistic approach that is, I believe, going to give someone the best results.
Yeah. Well, I'm seeing that from talking to different healers or people who've healed through things. They'll mention certain areas they went approached it by. It could be diet, could be exercise, could be a combination. But I find when they're working on one thing and they've actually healed, then they'll kind of mention that they also did these other things. And I'm like, wait a second. So there is almost like this circle of healing that's going on. It's you can't just take it from one way. Sometimes it's not easy to do it all at once, right? We start with
Right.
one thing and we kind of move through each one. You said that are you still nursing at this point as well? And if so, do you do both the coaching and the nursing, or how do you make that work? I'm just curious myself.
So nurse coaching is now a thing.
Okay.
And so what I do is I just work with people one-on-one. If they're in my state where I'm licensed, I can work under my nursing license, but I can work anywhere and do the work that I do. I do not work in a hospital any longer. I will never go back to a hospital or because I don't feel like that's a place of healing. When I was 5 and I said I wanted to be a nice nurse, what I really wanted was to help people heal. I'm empathic. I want people to have a really great life, which is an amazing gift. It was when I didn't have boundaries that it got totally out of whack. But now that it's balanced, I just see that I can have so much more of an impact in the work that I'm doing. And I'm so fortunate that my business background has allowed me. I do work with different health tech startups, and the one that is going to be launching their pilot in January is so exciting. And we have nurse coaches, we have specialty coaches from fitness to nutrition to finance, because finances play a big role in our stress, social workers and counselors and medical providers. So we can provide that wraparound care for these people. And they wear a ring that is connected to an app so that when they get stressed in the moment, that ring picks up stress. And stress in our body changes start happening 3 to 5 minutes before we actually notice it.
Mm.
And if we can catch, I call it the window of opportunity, somebody before their emotions go into that dysregulated space, we can help them to remain more conscious and make different choices. And that's the work I do as a coach. But when you can have something that alerts you to it before it's happening, anytime, day or night, and then it provides you, it will ask you questions to help you begin understanding what is actually going on. So it really is focusing on becoming mindful, because mindfulness, there's so many studies on mindfulness and its benefits, from PTSD to cardiovascular. And so we're helping you become more mindful, and then we're presenting you with free information on different skills that you might use, or maybe, hey, here's a yoga class, or there's these different things that you can engage in to continue to help you remain regulated, because it's really that remaining regulated that's going to help people to be able to move forward in what works for them. And then the ring tells you, like, did that work? Did it, your biometrics change? And if so, that's great, because it's using the artificial intelligence to really start to uncover your own health DNA.
Wow. And so that's so using this ring that you said it perfectly, because I notice when I'm getting stressed, I get this kind of breathing thing I do. I start to kind of breathe a little heavier, and I've become more
Mhm.
mindful of that moment. And then I try
Mhm.
to talk to myself and say, okay, I'm getting upset or something's happening. But then what happens is my automatic system of, yeah, but you have a right to be mad and it's okay to be upset. And then I have this fight and dialogue with myself. But it's important to learn that you're just harming yourself sometimes by going through it. It's not that you're wanting to shove down your emotions and feelings. It's just maybe we can express those feelings in a way that's not so harmful to ourselves, so that our immune system and nervous system go all crazy, and we keep jabbing at that, because it harms us over time. This all sounds fascinating with the ring and everything. How do people get in contact with you, and where do they find information on this, whatever this is? It seems like some kind of program or something that you're
Yes.
part of.
Well, you can reach me. It's your story to tell is .com is my platform. It's in transition right now because I'm moving my coaches over to this new place. I'll tell you about that in a minute, but it's your story to tell. It will continue to be my podcast where we talk about how people have navigated their hard, inspiring people in what's possible, just like Julia did for me, giving you ideas on how you can navigate your own life situations. So we have so many different stories. We're on a pause right now. We're coming back in January, where I'm going to be featuring all of these coaches who are on the new platform, and where we're going to talk about the breakdown in our healthcare system and why we believe that what we've created is a solution for the mental health and physical health crisis that we are in as a nation. So the company is Ayur, which is AYUR, and it is a ring and an entire platform that utilizes your, conversation with your chatbot who helps you to understand what you're going through. And then it takes our content that we have, it puts it in front of you. Eventually, if you want a coach, it helps to match you with a coach that has a similar story to yours of, looking to heal and recover. And what's possible. So it's pretty exciting, and it will launch in January. The pilot is only $180, gets you 6 months. The ring is yours, and the access to the platform. We're really wanting, we're a data-driven company, and we want to be able to show people the value. And then after January, we'll be opening it up. So we're only taking 2,500 users in that first 6 months, and then we will be opening it up as we're able to show how successful it is, and we'll be going into corporations and hopefully getting this to be part of their wellness benefit package for employees.
Well, it definitely shows how we can take, everyone's always upset about AI, right? And technology, but it's kind of showing you the road we're going if we're able to have these tools that'll help us along the way. To, we just think it's just us that always have to feel like we're alone and everything. But if you have something that's actually telling you what your body's doing, it's like, it's kind of funny, but it makes me think back to my grandmother, and she had a mood ring, and she would talk about this mood ring, and if it changed colors, right, what she was feeling. It's the same kind of concept, except this thing is going to give you a little more detail as to what's going on in your body, because it's probably picking
Exactly.
up on different stress responses, right? So,
That's
and
right.
no, I love all that. That's all amazing. When just a couple last things. You're a coach yourself. What were you certified as a coach? Just if you can go over that again. If
So,
you were working
my
with people.
certification, I started out as a nurse coach,
Hmm.
which is a 6 month program and doing a lot of coaching hours. And then I did mental health coach certification, went through that. I'm in my trauma and crisis specialty certification right now. I got certified in dialectical behavior therapy. So, the things that we were talking about. I'm also certified as a functional nurse coach, which just means that we're looking at ways to optimize your body, and sometimes we need to spend a little bit more time on, like, what do your labs look like, and dig a little deeper, because optimal is not necessarily the range they tell you. I found out
Right.
optimal vitamin D for me was not in the range of 30 to 80. I needed to be closer to that 80 to 100
Hmm.
for me to feel good in my body. So I help people discover kind of what works for you. In studies, they look at all of these different people, right? And how did something like a medication or a treatment work? We look at you as an N of one. What is going to be best for you? Because medicine and mental health is not a one size fits all. And I want to help you become empowered and making the choices that are going to have the greatest impact on your life. And I believe that you know that best, better than anyone else. And so I just get
Hmm.
to um, be curious about what it is that you're going through, and looking at all of these different aspects of who you are and how you might be able to make adjustments in different places in your life so that you can have the energy to even do the work, and to support your body, because it's hard. It's not, healing is not easy. Like, it's worth it, but it's not easy. And so we've
Hmm.
got to be able to put these supports around yourself so that you can actually continue through it, because most of the time we get stuck in the cycle because at some point the pain becomes too great that you shut down,
Hmm.
and you kind of go back to doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results, which we all know makes us insane. And I really was walking around feeling pretty
Feeling that way.
insane.
Yeah. I love that. And it is like a loop though, right? And you get to that loop and you get too far gone. It's with anything, right? Some people say that about weight gain, right? You get to a point, you're just like, how do I even start? But it's really having professionals like yourself or people you can talk to that can kind of help you kind of break down certain parts, and you'll find yourself, well, you'll get back there, but it just may take a little bit of time, right? but it's because everybody wants a quick fix. That's what pills are for.
Mhm.
That's what we try to do. But in the long run,
And then
it
it creates
doesn't.
a side effect. I
That's
always
right.
laughed at the commercials because it's like, and da 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 da, and
Yes.
death. And it's like,
Right, right. Occasionally. Yeah, it's like,
yeah.
oh, okay, let's just roll the dice and see what happens. Let's see
And
if we're
so
good.
then you're chasing another symptom, right? And
Right,
and
right.
I am that what I believe is complementary medicine. Like there are a time and a place for medications, but
Yes.
do we have to always stay on them? Sometimes we have to get ourselves out of and protect ourselves from having a stroke because our blood pressure is so out of control. But if we just have to keep titrating the medication up, like, wait a second, what are some things that we could also look at to get you to a better place? I'm excited about the technology because a lot of people don't want to sit with a coach or sit with a counselor
Hmm.
um, because that shame that we talked about.
Yeah.
But if you feel that you can talk about your situation um, to somebody that it doesn't go anywhere, that helps you to get to know yourself better, then you might do that. And so I think it's going to be great too for teens and the younger generation because they love their phones. They love to talk on them
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
play on them. And so we'll be able to engage with them around the clock whenever they need it. And I'm just excited to see how utilizing technology and connection with human can propel things forward.
Well, it all sounds amazing. I've really appreciated all the information you've given today. It wouldn't be a soul inspired episode if I didn't end with one final question, and it's a little spiritually driven, so we'll have to dig in a
Okay.
little bit. You just let me know how you feel about it. But it's really, if you look at the overall, Megan, overall, the life you've lived, the life you're going to continue to go on to become more, and the things we do. And the question I always end each episode is, why do you think we come here and incarnate? What is our grand meaning of why we're all here?
Mm. Well, I think we all have a different purpose. I think that we're all unique and we have a purpose. And it's really about finding that purpose. And that is where we feel fulfilled in what we're doing and enjoy and you feel fully alive. And it doesn't mean that there aren't hard things that happen. I think that we're all here for each other too, that we're better together. And unfortunately, in the world we live, there's so much, especially as election, this will air on a different day, but is tomorrow, right? Like people don't know how to care for and respect people from all different backgrounds. And I think the reason we're all so different is actually so we can become better at for me, I believe the greatest commandment is to love one another. And so that's what we're here to do. That's what I'm here to do. And we're going to bump up against people we don't agree with, but I actually think that's part of the plan and purpose is because those things, they refine us, they make us better and allow us to show up and love people. And for me, that's the greatest purpose.
I love the way you finished on that. That's perfect. I really enjoyed talking to you today. Thank you so much. I always turn to the audience and say, please continue to like, share, and subscribe to the Soul Inspired, so I can keep getting amazing guests on like Megan. And thank you so much, Megan, for bringing your insight today. And if anybody is out there and wants to reach out to Megan, again, your website, again, it's it's yourstorytotell.com. That's a way that they can connect with you. So thank you so much for being on today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So